right, everyone. Welcome to the second version. We were just talking to each other in the background, thinking that we had already started the webinar, but now we are on version 2 of today's webinar. Welcome, everyone, to the ASRG webinar, where we want to introduce the Risk Data Exchange Project, or RDX for shorts. This is a practical format for exchanging cybersecurity risk data across tools, teams, and organizations. The goal is quite simple. Like all of this effort we put into assessing risk, the risk information should not be trapped inside an Excel spreadsheet, a web portal, a single supplier, even in a single tool. It should be structured enough that we can share it, transfer it, review it in different tools, make sure it's protected, authentic, and of course, we want to reuse this information for future products. First of all, let me quickly introduce myself. My name's John Heldreth, and I'm the founder of the Automotive Security Research Group. I've had the honor of working with companies like Bosch, Porsche, Volkswagen, and Rivian. Today, I also have with me Matt Moser from Etimus. Matt, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for being here. You want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So, hi everyone. My name is Matthew Moser. I'm a software engineer here at Itimus. I've been working at the company for about 4 years now, and I've been collaborating with John on ASRG efforts for about that amount of time as well. Maybe slightly less. I forget exactly when I got brought on as part of ASRG as well. Uh, but I also have quite a bit of experience within automotive TARAs and the exchanging of risk data information. So this is very much a topic that is very close to my professional deliverables.
Yeah, so you have lots of experience about how it does work or doesn't work.
Mostly doesn't right now, unfortunately, but hopefully that's what we can at least try to resolve a bit more today.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with the industry challenge, and then we're going to talk about the ASRG context. Matt's going to help us walk through the structure, the intended use, how the community, how you can get involved in the community and contribute. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, you are going to understand a few things. First, why risk data exchange is a real operational problem. Secondly, what RDX is and what it is not. And third, how the first public release can be reviewed. So checking out what we've already developed. And last but not least, then how to get involved through ASRG. So just quickly, what's the issue here? Why are we talking about this? Why is it important? The challenge. Every cybersecurity management system is generating artifacts. This is risk assessments, risk registers, item definitions, damage scenarios, all of these fun things that we spend so much time, and a lot of us have really struggled through the last few years through Excel-based templates. I think now we're getting to the point where we're actually using tools and a more focused um, data focused tool set. But these artifacts often need to be moving between different stakeholders, different suppliers, OEMs, even your internal departments, between the engineering departments and the cybersecurity related people. Even afterwards, after the design phase, it's got to go into the operational phase, and this model has to be maintained. So there's lots of potential stakeholders here, and the problem is that we don't yet have a widely adopted, like standardized way to exchange this risk related information.
Yeah, and in practice, typically what we see is organizations will take one of two paths. The first, if they already have a tool, they'll provide either a portal access or a export for that specific tool. And typically that is in a machine readable format, but it's still in a format that we need to do some conversion for. If they work in Excel, which is the second path, they'll send those spreadsheets back and forth. Both of these approaches, they're fine for the moment, but they really aren't reliable. They don't provide a standardized exchange pattern. So it becomes difficult, especially as the recipient for this information, for me to understand the material that I've been provided. I need to understand their process, terminology, and if they have a specific tool for it, there's usually a very specific structure that that tool has that I then need to understand to incorporate their work. And the same goes for the other party. If I send them, the tool that we use, they need to understand our data format, and that becomes a massive bottleneck. Uh, so some of the big issues that we see from this is mostly about integrity of information and then the reliability of said information. If I receive information from a client, can I prove that the data that I recreate is from that version? Can I prove that it wasn't changed in transmission? Can I prove that the right stakeholders have access to that information when needed? That becomes an especially important question when we have someone who's higher up within the process, who's less in the need to know about the technical details, but they need to know those broad deliverables. That becomes especially challenging. And then it's also difficult to know if you're sharing the right amount of scope for the given project. Sometimes you'll need to send the entire everything that you have regarding your projects. Sometimes there'll need to be a small vertical slice. All of those things become incredibly difficult to do if there isn't a standard for that information exchange. And that's kind of what we see at the moment, or at least I see at the moment professionally when it comes to this exchange, is that it becomes a very specific problem that needs to be solved repeatedly per client I interact with. And that's going to be the same across anyone within the industry. I'm just telling my personal experience because it will apply to everyone else as well.
Yeah, and I think this becomes especially important in automotive. I mean, not only automotive, but let's talk about all products, right? But in automotive, we're talking about safety relevant products. And a vehicle level risk may depend on decisions made at the ECU level or software level or even your microprocessor or whatever is running and making those decisions. You want to make sure that the hierarchy, the connections between these different levels are not lost. And if we only exchange like a flat Excel sheet, it becomes very hard to understand why a risk exists, where it originates, and how does it connect to the higher level vehicle risk. I think this is super important because each level tries to take care of their own cybersecurity related risks, right? It could be that something is already considered at a lower level, and you actually continuously build on additional risk or risk reduction decisions at every level, which is somewhat unnecessary because you've already taken care of the root. And having these multi-hierarchical risk assessments, I believe, is what we're going to see in the future. And one of the things that the RDX is going to hopefully help us solve. It's not going to be perfect. This is going to be something that we have to iterate over and over again, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The other option that we have here is that actually, you could be that we could all use the same tool, or we could all go to Excel. This way we're using the same format. It's a proprietary format. The future state is not going to be a single tool. Yeah. Getting OEMs or suppliers to agree on one thing, forget it. We can barely agree between ourselves in a single OEM or a single supplier. Every organization now can keep its own process, its own tooling. Um, but when the risk data needs to move, it can be exchanged in a consistent, machine readable way. That allows us to connect damage scenarios, threat scenarios, attack paths, all of these different things across the different hierarchical levels.
Yeah, so what is RDX? RDX stands for Risk Data Exchange. It is a schema and specification for exchanging cybersecurity risk related data, and it's been developed through the ASRG technical committee with industry input. Automotive is the starting point for this, but the idea is relevant anywhere where product cybersecurity risk assessments are performed. So IoT, OT, we see automotive as that starting point, but it is something that could grow into other areas as well.
Yeah, and RDX is based on the idea of using an existing structure. And for us, we use the Cyclone DX structure as our basis for the schema. We wanted to use something that was already available. And since Cyclone DX has been widely used around SBOM and vulnerability related topics, it is a perfect fit. RDX and Cyclone DX are currently developing in parallel. There's no like formal agreement between us. We just really enjoy the work and effort that's gone into the Cyclone DX formats over at the OWASP. So we thought it was a great starting point for us. Our hope is that the work that we do here in ASRG, and more specifically the technical committee, this can contribute to a broader convergence, so industry does not end up with competing structures for the same use cases. What I mean by this is we don't want automotive industry to have a certain risk exchange formats, and then healthcare, and we would like to have a single way that every tool can bring in everything together. Um, this actually, the original idea started a few years ago. ETMIS actually started this with an open exam format. This was basically the first version, and it was like a great proof of concept that we learned a lot from, and now taking over the lessons learned and revised structure. Basically, we took that existing idea and then included the Cyclone DX format and then structured it very nicely into a complete package. We now have ETMIS and EAV have provided their input for the last 2 years. So Matt has been involved in this as well as a few other colleagues, giving constant feedback. Every 2 weeks we sit together. So really an interesting development.
Yeah, it certainly has been. And I do want to be clear about the boundaries of what RDX is and what it isn't. So, first, RDX is not CSMS. It isn't a risk methodology. We're not telling you how to perform risks. We're not telling you if the risk statement that you have created or that has been provided to you by another party is correct. We are simply encapsulating the data, verifying the integrity of it, and making sure that it is machine readable across numerous different systems. It's not designed to force every company into one tool. It is meant to be open in terms of letting it be interoperable with any sort of system. And it's just providing structure so the risk-related data rather, can be exchanged more consistently and without having to build, say, a custom converter for every variant of machine readable format that you could get. It's really just meant to facilitate communication, not tell you how to perform your risk interpretation or verify that it's correct.
And Matt, I think this is super important. It's we're focused on the data here, not the methodology, not the process behind it. Each company can have its own process, method, and tooling. Here is only listen. We have data. We exchange it in a nice format and send it over. And then each company can also interpret that differently. So you do have to keep in mind how that data was generated, which methodology, and so on. But you don't have to make assumptions then. So you have the data, and it's there for you to interpret yourself and make your own decisions, and not base those decisions or trusting the supply chain. Not that I don't trust the supply chain, but the whole point is just to make everything transparent.
Yeah, exactly. And there are a variety of different use cases for this. One of the first ones I can think of is supplier to OEM. So a supplier can perform a risk assessment for an ECU or a other component within their system, And the OEM doesn't necessarily need portal access to that tool that the supplier used. Instead, the supplier can export the agreed upon subset of risk data in this RDX format, and then the OEM can review that or import that package and connect to the supplier level information to get those larger vehicle level decisions within their system and be able to verify that everyone is more or less on the same page instead of having to worry about, did something break with the conversion? Did we understand their specific terminology correctly for the mappings? It's really designed to facilitate that communication pathway.
Yeah. And so we have supplier to OEM, then we also have like internal use cases or internal stakeholders. Think about if a company changes tools, so migration from one tool to the next, or you have data from 1986, which needs to be brought into a new tool. Um, it also consolidates risk registers. It can also, then it uses a neutral structure for migration. RDX can preserve relationships between all of these things, all of the scenarios, the controls, decisions, and so on. And this ultimately allows us to have a traceable path from decision all the way back, and from threats, risk, through your controls, and testing as well. So there's many different use cases here, and I, to be honest, in the GitHub, we're going to show you guys here in a little bit. I think there's like 20 different use cases. It doesn't make sense to list them all here, but one of the important parts here is that you don't have to exchange all the information. You can use this schema to transmit threat catalog or even an item definition. And then you enable transparency between different stakeholders, allowing not a single, not the complete risk assessment. Maybe you don't want to give, the supplier or the OEM the complete risk assessment, but you just want to give it a little part. This also can be a great way for you to transfer data, just partial data.
Yeah, there is quite a lot, and I am excited for us to see the GitHub repository. Briefly, we'll talk a little bit about how we built RDX. I believe we've already alluded to this earlier on within the presentation, but here's more of just a higher level overview. So RDX was developed as part through the ASRG technical committee. This committee meets every 2 weeks, and we review a variety of different topics: schema decisions, examples, use cases, issues, change requests, essentially anything related to RDX. It's likely we've discussed it at some point. The work has been iterative, version managed, and designed to create something that is practical enough to test with real use cases.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, this all started a few years ago, actually, with the initial effort in Open Exam. We took over this, but to be honest, we started from zero. We took all of these lessons learned and improvement measures into this new schema based on the Cyclone DX structure and foundation. And we used GitHub for version management, our issue management, um, all of this crazy stuff, because you have people working on this like all around the world. And so you just never know when someone's going to have time to say, oh, we need to add this or we need to change this. So using GitHub really helped us to coordinate all of these activities. Well, over the last few years, technology has also changed. And one of the things that we incorporated into our development process, of course, was everybody's two favorite letters, AI. And the way that we did this is basically we had the whole entire repo there. And then if someone saw something that needed to be changed, or we need to add a feature or change a use case, we would create a ticket. And this ticket would automatically, through GitHub Actions, kick off an AI assisted workflow. and then we had created some skill and an agent. We were using Claude at the time. I think we still are. Claude would review the ticket, make a proposed change on a separate branch. Then, when we came together as a committee, we would review all of these kind of solutions or pull requests. And then the committee would review these, decide together whether to merge or to make changes. And this was really a great opportunity for us, since we all have full-time jobs, we're all working and doing other things, families, of course, as well. We don't exactly have so much time to spend it creating a schema for risk data exchange. So this really helped us increase the maturity and get things moving along. So I think let's probably jump over to the GitHub repo maybe and show you guys what we've already done. And Matt, you can start talking about it once I get the share working correctly. So I think it's this one.
And while you get that set up, the AI assisted workflow was quite helpful for us, especially as John had mentioned. We do have other jobs, we have other responsibilities. I know, at least for myself, Itemus is my employer, and while I greatly enjoy the work with ASRG, ultimately, when it comes down to, if I need to work on something for Itemus or ASRG, ultimately, Itemus is the one that pays my bills. But using the AI assisted workflow, it was able to greatly help us accelerate the development of this particular schema, because it was very easy for me to say, oh, I just have an idea for something that should be included, write down the ticket, it'll do its thing, and then we can review it in the next meeting. I didn't have to go in and manually make changes. It was just a quick spur of the moment idea, and then there's something generated. Worst case, it's generated incorrectly, but we at least have something more to go off of. And it's much easier to correct something than to start something from scratch, unless it was truly horrible. But then that's another topic that usually doesn't happen. But
But
uh,
but it did happen, we did have those
yeah,
cases where we had to change things, and we didn't give AI enough context to understand what we were trying to accomplish, and so it would go off and do something completely crazy, and we would have to back it out. But yeah, in general, I think it was a positive development technology that we utilized.
oh yes, absolutely. And I wouldn't. That's not to downplay that. We never had any issues at all with it. We certainly did. Most people who use AI will tell you that you'll run into a couple of issues with it, but it was still a good learning experience. It helped really solidify our understanding of where it is beneficial, where we were actually not giving it the tools it needed to succeed, and then how we could actually address those gaps. So here we can see the GitHub repository. A key design principle for the structure of this is that we wanted to provide data structure without a process lock-in. So RDX is defining the structure of the exchange, but not dictating how each organization performs their risk management, or even what they necessarily do with the information once they pull it into whatever system they're using. It's just a way for communication to be facilitated and for the data to be ensured to be accurate from its point of origin to its point of destination. How that organization decides to populate the data, what it shares, and how it reviews and approves that data, that's always going to be up to the individual organization. We are just providing the structure.
Yeah, and just to take a minute here, this is the repo. You can actually see the last commit was 34 minutes ago, which was directly before this, and you can see Mr. Claude making some changes. Um, so overall, we do have here um, the README. You can check it out. There's we also have two structures that we've kind of planned. One is JSON and XML. And you can see here the key features, all of this stuff. Um, I'm not going to go through everything here. I just want to point out a few of the important points. First of all, there is a spec here. You see the JSON. I like JSON better, but you know. And here you can see the entire structure. Um, there is documentation as well. And there's also a methodology document here. So you can check it out. We tried to align it with 21434, PAS 8475, CAL and TAF frameworks. I mean, you can't do everything, but you can see here how the data structure is. And yeah, so I think what's important is check it out. You can also here see all the use cases. This actually was a long discussion. I think this took a few months to identify which use cases we did or didn't want to approach or target. And so, really an interesting discussion. Check this out as well. It gives you a little bit more of a clear understanding of what it was made for. And we also mapped it to the ISO so you can kind of see which work packages are supported from the ISO 21434 and also the PAS 8475. Um, so I think it's a lot of great information. It's not perfect, but check it out. Here we did a lot of examples. We even did the headlight example from Tara in the ISO 21434 at the end of it. So you can check it out and see a real kind of example of how this might work or not work for your use case. But yeah, so I think the whole thing is here. It's for everybody to use and to check it out. It doesn't work for everything yet, but we hope that this will slowly generate into a better relationship model. And yeah,
Yeah, without going into too much detail, you can certainly see that the schema supports a variety of different deliverables. So we see things like your item definitions, your scope, threat catalogs, damage scenarios, etc. We really wanted to, with RDX, is to design a data structure that is not only for the full and complete risk assessment. There are certainly many cases where you might only want to share a subset of that information. So maybe you only want to share a threat catalog or the attack path, or even just your final risk assessment result. And because of that, it is important for each stakeholder to have their privacy when it's required. There's confidential information between parties, or just some information is simply not necessary and would otherwise even be distracting. I personally have had that case where I've just gotten way too much information for what I requested, and then it becomes a tracking issue of finding what I actually need out of this giant pile of data. So the schema does allow for you to decide what subset you need to provide where, and that also helps facilitate those faster implementations directly into your existing data model. So there's a lot of use cases here. I'd highly recommend going through each and just seeing where and what you can do, and I think you'll be very surprised at how modular this particular schema can be.
yeah. And one of the biggest concerns, or one of the concerns, is when you're exchanging data, how do you know if it's authentic and the data integrity is still there? I don't know how many times I send a Excel document or Excel table, spreadsheet, whatever, and you're just not sure if you hit space somewhere or you deleted something by accident, or even on the receiving part of it. Um, it's just super difficult because Excel is such a flexible tool, right? And so we wanted to build in authenticity and integrity checks into the schema as well, to hopefully mitigate any of these types of topics. So we signatures and package level controls are built in, but to be honest, this is not RDX does not prove that every risk statement inside the file is correct. The content of the file, of course, needs to still be generated by the organization, and the responsibility of the content and quality of that file is still at the organizational level, and the receiving organization still needs governance and make sure that this file is correct. So checking signatures, also putting into question the content that's actually in that risk assessment itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe we have hit on this a couple of times, but it is an important distinction to make because what we have created here is really just a way to structure data. We have no checks on if the data that was put in to begin with was done properly, or that the risk assessment methodology is good, or that the person who had performed, say, Atara, did a good job with it. It really is going to just be a way to structure that data, enable you to share it across organizations and reuse that data in a very easy manner without having to create different conversion methods for each type of file that you receive. So it is so important to do your due diligence with the data that you receive. You'll just know that when you receive data from another party, if it's in the RDX format, uh, the integrity of that file was maintained from it leaving its origin point to the destination of your computer. We do have the release version available through the ASRG portal or through the GitHub repo. The public release includes the RDX specification and schema artifacts, which we've shown a bit briefly here. So whenever you have the time, you are more than welcome to. In fact, we would really appreciate it if you go through and really dig into it, see what is there, what you like about it, and more importantly, what you don't like about it. That's actually the best way for us to improve the standard. So, while we love hearing that everything's great and there are no problems, if there is a problem, we would love to hear it. That's actually what we're looking for. So, any sort of additional feedback, or if you want to even assist with adding the specific area that's missing, that's even better as far as we're concerned.
Yeah. I mean, we love problems, right?
Yeah.
That's what we love to solve. So I thought I would just show quickly here, for those that don't know the ASRG portal. This is kind of what we consider our single source of truth for automotive security related topics. As you can see, there's lots of content in here. Um, just quickly here, the knowledge base is really quite interesting as we collect topics and then sort them into Obsidian. We have news, industry, all the events. There's a bug bounty function coming up soon, which is going to be really interesting. There's community research, and then here projects, or I'm sorry, technical committees. And here down at the bottom, you'll see risk data exchange. ETMIS and AVL have been big supporters of this project or this technical committee for the last year or so. And here you can also find the repository on GitHub. There's many other features and functions here in the portal. If you get a second, check it out. I think it really will help you in your daily work with automotive cybersecurity. All right, I'm going to switch back over to the slides. And there we go. So, so as Matt said, we want you to be able to review it. It is publicly available. You can see the two links down here at the bottom at the ASRG portal and GitHub repos. But we've talked a lot about the product itself, the specification, the schema. But how do you get involved? And ASRG, Automotive Security Research Group, is a worldwide community, and we want people to get involved. You can join the ASRG Technical Committee for Risk Data Exchange. So if you go into the portal, you will go to technical committees, and up in the top right corner, there's a join technical committee button. That'll send us over a request. We'll review and make sure it makes sense, and then you can get involved there. The goal is to make risk data exchange useful for the real world, not only one organization or one tool. So, um, risk data is just too important to remain trapped in spreadsheets, portals, vendor specific tools, and formats. RDX gives us a practical starting point for structured, selective, and trustworthy exchange. The first the first public release is ready for review, and your feedback can help us shape the next version. Um, I just want to say that I believe that RDX is not the end specification. It is a specification. We believe that we're going in the right direction. We need your feedback. We want to bring this together with already existing other industry related risk data exchange formats and make this really work for everyone. So, Matt, do you have any closing remarks?
At least from my end, I believe you covered everything, but yeah, this is definitely not the end point. We don't anticipate this being the final time you'll ever see a addition to this particular schema. We are very much so looking for feedback from the community to actually improve this and get it to something where it is used to make everyone's lives easier. Because I know that me myself, I have recently been working on a project where if I had a schema like this, it would have made my life a lot easier. And I have heard countless stories across multiple different companies about that during my time here at Itemus.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can talk all day about this topic, but I think it's important. Thank you all for joining, first of all. And if you do have questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chats and we can answer them live. Or, of course, you can reach out to us. If you go to the ASRG portal, there is a technical committee email link in there. So it'll go right directly to all of us that are contributing and participating in that technical committee. So feel free, fire away. We're happy to answer some questions over the next few minutes, if there are any. And maybe Matt, I can ask you a question first,
Yeah.
because you're actually on the tooling vendor side. How does this make your life easier as a tooling vendor?
Yeah. So for me, it saves a lot of time. That is the biggest benefit. If I were to use a system like this, if it was set up, I'll say in a finished state where the full process is there. The biggest pain when it comes to being a vendor and working with other customers is that everyone has their own methodology for how they perform Taras. And because we provide a tool that allows you to create a model based Tara, customers want to take their existing Tara information and bring it into our tool. Uh, because spreadsheets are very commonly used, everyone has their own way of creating a spreadsheet, their own way of deciding where the structure of different elements are. And typically, we have to either create a new converter from scratch or heavily modify an existing converter in order to bring that information in. And then, of course, if a company uses one standard for one type of Tara and then another standard for another, that just doubled the amount of converters that we have to create. Uh, if everything was under a single machine readable format, we would create the converter once, and then I wouldn't have to think about it. And I can just bring their information into the tool and perform whatever operations I need to. So that is the biggest benefit that I see for this is time. It saves me so much time if this was something that everyone used.
Well, when you're migrating data, you always have that opportunity to um, introduce errors, right? Or every time you touch data, it gets a little bit less integral. So Um, but I really like the RDX. This is a good first starting point for us, and hopefully, I believe there's also something going on at the Cyclone DX. They're also looking into a risk-related uh, data exchange formats, and I think we need to work with those guys as well and bring our experience into what they're already generating. Hopefully, come up with a common structure for all the industries. So, um, I wanted to ask you. We One thing we didn't include yet is um, the confident the confidence rating of a risk tolerance. Not tolerances like which risk I can accept or like risk appetite, not that, but how confident are the risk related values in the schema. But to be honest, I think the industry right now is still a little bit too early for this type of thinking. We're still trying to get all the process related and methodology related topics static and working correctly for us and understanding what they mean for us. Um, so uh, we all these new ideas, features, and functions. We should add these as new open topics in the GitHub repo and see what AI comes up with as a proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that I think could still be added that could still be quite beneficial, and especially as this develops over time, both in terms of us making direct contributions, but also unexpected world events. I know that the White House, this was at least 2 or 3 months ago, and I'm not sure if they actually went through with it or if this was something that eventually got tabled, but they were looking to prevent US companies from using LLMs that originated from certain countries. I believe it was China specifically. Now, I don't know if they've ever actually implemented that or if that's something that was proposed at one point and then just vanished into the ether. I'm not quite sure. But that was something that when I read the news that day, that was, oh, okay, let's go ahead and add that to our standard then. Let's add a country of origin for these different elements within the system. That way we can, again, further adopt the standards and practices that are relevant either based on country or international or national law. There's quite a lot of ways that this has already grown over time, and I'm excited to see where that continues to grow in the future.
Yeah. And I want to mention that we made the Git repo public. Okay. But the intention is not for everybody to fork this thing and make their own version of this format. The idea here is that we all use kind of a similar formats that can all be read by the same tooling, can be all the same data structure, and then you won't have these proprietary related data formats that actually don't work anywhere. So we're very happy that everybody can take a look, get access to it. But I would only request that if you do see something wrong, if you do see something that you want changed, let's create a ticket. We'll review it in the committee. We'll get it pushed out. We're very fast this way and super agile. So please always give feedback. Don't just fork it and create your own version of it. Try to loop back to us, give us your feedback so we can integrate it in the complete solution here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's very likely that if you suggest something, it's something that another person would suggest as well. So it doesn't make sense for everyone to have their own version of this. If we get everyone on the same page, everyone's lives will be a lot easier. And that's ultimately what we're looking to do here is to just make the process of exchanging this risk data both better from an integrity perspective, but also better from a usability and data ingestion perspective, which that will certainly help quite a lot of people in the industry, myself included, which is why I'm very excited about the idea of this. Uh, but any amount of time you can save, that just means you can work on something else that could be a bit more important than just making conversions for a risk data model.
Yeah. Well, Matt, Thank you so much for your time today. I don't see any questions in the chat coming up. We're gonna throw this on YouTube. Let everybody enjoy it for free, like we always do with all of the ASRG content. So, thank you very much, Matt. Would you like to say anything before we close for today?
Thank you for having me. And yeah, feel free to add tickets to the repository if there's something that you see or something that is missing. We'd love to hear feedback, and maybe we'll see you in a risk data exchange meeting someday ourselves.
Sounds great. And don't forget, Secure Our Streets conference is coming September 17th. It is free, it's online, and that is where you get all of the best knowledge up to date for automotive cybersecurity. So, thank you, everyone. Have a great day, great night, wherever you might be in the world, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.